before you run your own business, help someone else run their business. And find a boss that is prepared to teach you and say, look, I'm going to give you 1 or 2 or 3 years of my life, and I'm going to pour my heart and soul into this business, but under the one condition that you pay me well and teach me everything you know. And then one day I'm going to kind of launch and go out into my own business.
In 1837, Horace Mann created the education system, a system at the time designed to pump out factory workers and professors. The same system that is still being used today in the 21st century. Now, Mann's system is backfiring. We are being molded by the same industrial system that has existed for close to 200 years. That system delivers us into a digital economy that has no need of our outdated skills. This isn't our teachers' fault. This isn't the government's fault. This is due to a rapidly changing world full of technology and unforeseen circumstances. And us Gen Zs are caught in the middle. Welcome to the Driven Young Podcast, the podcast for stressed, overwhelmed young Australians, teaching you practical life skills you can implement now to set yourself up in life. And now your host, Byron Dempsey.
Welcome back to the Driven Young Podcast. Today we are talking about business and entrepreneurship. More specifically, how to start a business and learn about business from Australia's #1 business coach. Dale Beaumont is best known as an award-winning technology entrepreneur, international speaker, and author of 19 best-selling books. Having started his business at the age of 19, Dale went on to build 3 different million-dollar companies before the age of 30. He now runs Business Blueprint, an education company designed to help fellow entrepreneurs build the business of their dreams. As a result of Dale's success, he's been interviewed on The Today Show, Mornings, Sky News Business, ABC Radio, as well as being featured in over 100 newspapers and magazines, including Forbes, the Huffington Post, Business Insider, Gizmodo, Men's Health, and GQ. In 2007, Dale became a father and decided to start traveling with his young family, following the formula 2 months work, 1 month adventure. Dale with his wife Catherine and 2 boys have now travelled to over 85 countries. This includes stepping foot on all 7 continents, yes, even Antarctica, visiting all 5 Disneyland parks and volunteering at several orphanages. I just want to drill that in. Dale works 2 months, then travels a month. Then he works 2 months, then travels a month. So you can see why I'm so excited to have Dale on the show. He's one of the most knowledgeable people on the planet when it comes to small business. And in this episode, we hear his story, then dive headfirst into exactly how to start a business. We talk about all the steps involved and break it down so it's so simple for you, you can follow it like a recipe. More importantly, we discuss how to actually learn about business. I am so heavily against business degrees at university, and whenever I talk about how useless and outdated they are, people always ask me, but how do we actually start a business then? So in this episode, we're going to show you how. Now, over to Dale. Dale, welcome so much to the podcast.
Thanks so much.
Super excited to have you on today.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to talk a lot about business, kind of get into just, I guess, development and business for younger people, maybe entrepreneurship. But before we do that, I'd love to know a little bit more about you, kind of specifically what you did after high school and what you're currently up to.
Yeah, so I grew up in Western Sydney, went to school, of course, but as a kid had a lot of energy, so I got involved in the sport of gymnastics. And so I trained 36 hours a week, and it was pretty intense. Learned a lot of lessons from my sporting career about hard work and discipline and delayed gratification and how to motivate myself. But the most important thing that I learned was how valuable it was to have coaches and mentors, you know, in your life. And as an athlete, you know, my coach helped me to represent my country and achieve like the peak of my sort of like, you know, what I was capable of in that sport. And so when I finished school, I thought about, do I go to university? And I just decided to sort of take a year off, and I decided to find coaches for things that were of interest to me. And I wanted to learn more about business, and I wanted to learn about sales and marketing. And also I wanted to learn about how to make money and build wealth. And so I ended up working for a personal development / wealth creation company for around 6 months. And I went through all of their courses, learned a whole bunch of amazing stuff, and through those courses kind of decided that I was going to start my own business, which was running personal development programs for young people. So that was my first company that I started in 2001.
Sounds similar to me.
Yeah, and it was amazing, and still running 20 years later. We can chat more about that if you like, and all of the trials and tribulations of running a business. It's the ultimate roller coaster. There's a lot of highs, but heaps a lot lows as well. And one day you feel like, you're just like on top of the world, and the other day it kind of all comes crashing down. You got to pick yourself back up. And so entrepreneurship is awesome, but it also requires you to have a lot of resilience. I think that's the one thing that really is the most important quality of someone that wants to be in business, is you've just got to keep going no matter what. And I used to think that people that were successful in business were successful because they somehow had it easy, or didn't kind of had a smooth path and didn't have some of the problems that other people kind of experience. But that's right. But what I realized was the people that are the most successful are the people that have been through the most amount of crap, and the people that have the most amount of ups and downs. And it's almost like a rite of passage. It's like, if you want to be really successful in business, you've got to deal with a lot of issues and dramas and challenges, and just keep fighting back.
Yeah. And do you think, because you mentioned resilience there, which I'm a huge fan of, because I think Gen Z as a generation, we have a lot less resilience than other generations, because we've been given everything on a silver platter. We've been given technology, everything comes so easily. And do you think being a gymnastic, or like working that, hours and hours every single day, help develop that resilience early on?
Yeah, I definitely think that sport is a way of building resilience and a kind of a positive mindset, and understand about discipline and forming good habits. And it's basically a case of the harder you work, then the more successful that you become. In life, and I say this to young people all the time, that you either play now and you'll have to pay later, or you can pay now and play later. You're always going to have to pay. It's just a lot of people spend a lot of their 20s and even 30s, partying. And I'm not saying I don't have fun and do awesome things, but then they spend the next like 40 years of their life working.
Yes.
And I think that if you start making smarter choices along the way, like just by you've spoken to other people about saving, and just making sure you begin investing early as well, and to make sure that you become really good at something. Maybe spend a little bit less time playing video games and more time working on skills that can actually turn into income opportunities for you, or possibly skills that could help you to run your own business. It's all about making investments now to pay off in the future. And so if you work really hard, then it is totally possible, and many people have done that. Is by the age of 35 or 40, you can be in a position where you effectively are financially free.
And you could retire if you wanted to.
Could retire and just kind of spend the next 50 years kind of living off all of the hard work that I put in my 20s and 30s. So it is a bit of a balance, and it's not one or the other. You can kind of have a combination of both. But I think the most important thing that people could do is educate themselves, which is exactly what people are doing right now, which is so awesome.
Yes.
So I really recommend, one of my mentors said to me once, the more that you learn, the more that you'll earn. So educate yourself, and then have mentors, and then just got to take massive action in whatever you want to do, whether that be to, it really doesn't matter anything. Just, people don't want to pay for just someone that's just average at something, but they will pay a premium price for someone that's amazing at something. So be the best graphic designer that you can be, or be the best, nurse that you can be. Whatever it is that your calling is, just be awesome at that.
Yeah, awesome. And you kind of mentioned there, do I have fun in my 20s, or do I sacrifice my 20s so I'm financially free in the future? And I think because of technology and everything, starting a business has never been easier. Like being able to create income doing something you love has never been easy, and I think it's very easy to balance now. I mean, I like to think I'm working quite hard, but I'm still going to go Europe and all that sort of stuff and have fun. And so what are your thoughts? I guess you started a business, what did you say, 2001 was it?
Yeah, 2001. So I was 19.
So there's no Xero, which is accounting software. There was no kind of Google, social media, advertising, all that sort of stuff, which we have now. So it's like starting a business then would have been so much more difficult to when it was now. And the opportunities we have now in terms of starting a business is just massive.
It's never been easier. It's never been cheaper. It's never been, customers have never been more accessible to people. Barrier to entry just doesn't exist.
There is no barrier to entry.
No one expects you. That's the best thing about COVID. No one expects you to have an office anymore. So you could, it's totally acceptable for you to run meetings from home. And so, you just don't need to have an office as well. So it's just so much easier to start your own business if it's your calling. And I do believe that more people should consider business as an option, but I don't believe that business is for everyone, because it does require you to have that resilience that we were talking about before. And some people just don't, they'd rather just earn a certain salary and it's predictable every single week.
And that's great. Like I'm sure every entrepreneur like fantasizes about just having a salary. I've been just like, oh man, I would love to just have money coming in without the stress of like of getting clients every single week and that sort of stuff. Like that's really valuable, and I think a lot of people are more suited towards that. I just think it's super important that we don't push people down business, but we do open it up as a more viable option. It is
really something that everyone should consider, but don't think that you're a lesser person if it's not right for you. Just be honest with yourself, and if it's not, that's fine. There's still great opportunities for you to make good income and to save well and to invest and build wealth as a great employee. But don't just whatever you're doing, whether it's business or it's working in a job, just make sure that you always kind of do more than is asked of you, and always try to kind of like step things up.
Because I spoke about this with Brian actually in our episode. We're just like, even if you're just getting coffee, you need to get coffee well. Because we're not going to if you can't even get coffee, a simple job, well, we're not going to trust you with a project. We're not going to trust you with a client. You need to do everything, beyond what is asked of you. When it comes to running a business for clients, or if you're an employee for a new boss, especially if you're young and you're just starting out and you want to prove yourself by moving up the ranks, so to speak. And when you say business, like business to be a better option, we don't mean go to university and study business. Like, I'm not even sure what business at uni is. We're talking about like actually kind of entrepreneurship and launching and starting something that you're passionate about, correct?
So when we talk about business, you could go off if you want to and do a, what is it called? Like a Master's of Business, an MBA. It's like 4 years at university. But the problem with studying business at university is it's mostly theoretical. And it is also mainly geared towards organizational structures and information for working in a big corporation, not for running your own sort of like small business. And so it really doesn't equip you with the skills of running your own business. Maybe running someone else's business, fine. So I think there are far better ways to learn business yourself, and that will be through a combination of self-education. Like there's 10 or 20 books that you can read, which will be way more valuable, and you can get those books for like $100, way more valuable than spending $30,000 or $40,000 on you doing a university degree, and then having that as debt, that you then have to pay off. And also the other thing would be so self-education is one, and the other thing is through learning from other successful entrepreneurs. And
coach, like you mentioned earlier on.
A coach, coaching is definitely part of it. You can get a coach like someone like me or any other people out there that are happy to teach other people how to run their own business. But even another good bit of advice is, before you run your own business, help someone else run their business. And find a boss that is prepared to teach you and say, look, I'm going to give you 1 or 2 or 3 years of my life, and I'm going to pour my heart and soul into this business, but under the one condition that you pay me well and teach me everything you know. And then one day I'm going to kind of launch and go out into my own business. And so get a job and have a boss that is prepared to teach you and show you and educate you on a whole bunch of things. If you make your intentions kind of clear, then they will kind of say, here's how to do this, and here's how to reconcile payments, or here's how we do stock take, or they'll start showing you kind of more and more. And then sometimes there's a big opportunity in that for many young people, because the majority of business owners that hold most of the wealth right now are people in their 50s and 60s that will be retiring in the next decade. And so there are literally something like maybe 1.3 million businesses that are going to change hands within the next 10 years. And many of those, just in Australia, and of course the stats
that's just in Australia.
Similar around the world. And so what that will mean is that this is an opportunity for young people to get in on a company that's already successful, work hard, and then basically through sweat equity be able to buy their way into the business, and then be able to, through the profits of the business, take the business over completely and kind of buy it off their boss, so to speak. And rather than starting something from scratch, they're already able to just basically transition, buy into the business through what's called like vendor finance, which basically means your boss is financing you rather than you having to put up $200,000 or $300,000 to buy the business. They might say, you'll pay me $100,000 over the next like 4 years or 5 years.
Right.
And so the vendor, the owner, is financing you to buy the business, and that's kind of a way of you being another alternative for you being able to get into business. So you can start a business from scratch, or you can work in someone else's business with the potential of maybe one day taking over that particular business, or you could buy a business, but that will involve you kind of putting up capital as well. So there's a number of different options that you've got, or you can also look at things like licensing or franchising, where you can find another business model that's successful.
Which is basically franchising. In McDonald's is the classic example.
Exactly.
And a big one that I would have loved to have gotten to was F45.
Yep.
Like, especially in the area I live, I knew whoever got that one, they're killing it. Like, it's such a because it's not wealthy, but it's just, I know the people in that area and they love that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
F45, and it's like, it's this tiny room and they charge like $60 a week or something. Like, it's such a good business model.
Yeah. So you can find something like that that's maybe, that's going to do well, or something in America that you could bring to Australia.
That's a good one.
Or e-commerce is another kind of huge opportunity for people as well. Importing products, from, Alibaba or AliExpress, and then on selling them, or drop shipping.
And that's huge right now on TikTok. It's actually, because I think dropshipping is great to kind of dip your toes and get a feel for it. It's not long-term business. Like, you're not going to create long-term wealth from it. I don't think so.
That's right.
But I've dipped my toes into it. It's a lot of fun. It's basically just where you create a store on Shopify, and you find a whole bunch of products, and when someone purchases it, you buy it for half the price from China or wherever, and you send it directly to them instead of them buying it from China. I know that's probably a bad way of explaining it, but that's basically it. Exactly. And it's a good way to, like, there's no upfront cash. It's a good way to kind of just, you need to pay for Shopify and some Facebook ads, but like $100 you can get started. This is a good way to dip your toes into the water and kind of get into some marketing.
Yeah.
Which
there's
is
so
important.
many options that are out there now.
And so I did what you mentioned. I started working for someone, and like, I guess, like, I'm a huge advocate of business, but I would be hesitant to say to someone who's 18 saying, I want to start a business straight out of high school, because it's like, you're going to get hit like a truck. Like, you've gone from a structure, an 8-hour day structure where you have to ask to go to the toilet and everything. Now you're starting a business, you've got no accountability, there's no one to look up to, it's just you're doing everything yourself. So I think if you can figure out something, like if you want to do a marketing business, go work for someone who's doing marketing for 6 months or 12 months or something, learn their systems, learn their processes, and then create that for your own business. Is that something you recommend? Yeah,
for sure. I think that's a great thing to do, is to get a job for, like, and then people always talk about sort of like different levels of entrepreneurship. Everyone wants to be an entrepreneur, but the first step is to be a great employee.
Yes.
And then actually to step up from employee to being a manager, because, you have to, if you want to one day become an entrepreneur, you're going to have to manage people. So the sooner you learn about how to become a manager, which is a different skill set to just being a good worker. So being a good kind of manager is then important. And then you're going to kind of step up from that sort of management level. And then you're going to be basically like an owner. You're going to start something and then eventually sort of step up to be an entrepreneur. And a true entrepreneur is actually someone that doesn't even work day to day in their business. Actually has a general manager or other staff running it, and they sort of just oversee it. But before you can get to that point, you've got to kind of go through those levels, and then one day you'll kind of like reach the top. But you've got to learn at every single kind of stage. So start where you are, and then just keep moving forward.
Because that was something I realized, like, as soon as I started my business, I was like, okay, well, now suddenly I've got to do accounting, I've got to manage team offshore, I've got to do all this random stuff that I've never touched in school. I've never learned anything about accounting. I don't know how to do my taxes. I've no idea what interest and all that sort of stuff is. It hits you like a truck, and you're like, oh man, I don't know what to do. It's super stressful. And I was like, if you could learn that first, and as you mentioned, if you can get into a mentor, or what do we want to call it, if you can get to a small business, especially if they're, I don't know, 10, 15 people, you'll get to see how the business runs, the inside of it, and actually see how everything works. So you can avoid making mistakes when you start your own business. And so I think that's super important as someone, because entrepreneurs become such a sexy word nowadays. It's like everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. They don't even know what it is. It's like they just want to be it for the ego sort of thing, as opposed to actually creating a proper business. Like, what are your thoughts on that, as kind of like the word just becoming something that's just very it's becoming an entrepreneur because they want to be an entrepreneur, not because they have a problem to solve.
Yeah, look, I think it is very, trendy, and a lot of people kind of think that, being an entrepreneur gives them a certain sense of significance, and I like the kind of the sound of it. But it is challenging. It's tough. It's highs and lows, and it's lots of learning, and it's you got to keep kind of like and the failure rate is very high as well.
It's over 95% or something.
Yeah. So and that's not to discourage anyone from doing it. It's just to say that it's cool, but like anything, it's cool for the 5 or 10% of people that sort of like make it. For everyone else, it tends to be like just a lot of hard work and a lot of uncertainty. But there is a way to try and get yourself into the top 10 or 20% of business owners or entrepreneurs, and that's to make sure that you educate yourself like a lot. So reading books, listening to podcasts from successful entrepreneurs, having good coaches and mentors, because the more that you learn, the more that you'll increase your chances of success, because rather than you having to make all of the same mistakes that other people have made hundreds of times, you can learn from their experience, and that's gonna save you like years and years of wandering around in the dark trying to find your way.
Yeah, awesome. And so you've just kind of told us a few ways that we can learn, so we can do all those different things you mentioned. But let's say we've kind of learned a bit. How do we start a business? If there's someone out there who has a great idea, what's just some quick fire tips to starting a business? Do we need to know systems? Like what's important when it comes to starting a business? Should we just focus on solving the problem first? Like, do we need to figure out our avatar? What should we know when we're starting a business?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is to, like, if we really take a step back right to the beginning, it's just like, are you okay with the fact that you're going to, the whole thing about being an employee is, if I give you 1 hour's worth of work, I'm going to get 1 hour's worth of pay, and that's immediate benefit. In business, it doesn't work like that. You're going to have to put out 5, 10, 20, 50 hours worth of time for sometimes zero return. And if you're not someone that's prepared to do that, then you probably shouldn't even start, your business, because that's the whole thing about, in the end, when you're successful, you can get paid like obscene amounts of money, but for many months or many years, you may have been paid very, very little to nothing. And so if you're not the type of person that's, when I talked about before I used to be a gymnast, one of the things that I learned was delayed gratification. Sometimes you work on a particular skill for weeks or months to finally kind of be able to do something. If you're like trying to do like a double somersault and you got to like stick the landing, like 95% of it's failure. And then eventually you kind of like, get your aerial sensors kind of tuned, and eventually you can kind of like stick the landing. But there's a lot of trial and error to kind of get there. So first of all, you've got to realize, are you a person that understands delayed gratification, and I'm going to have to work at something for weeks or months with little to no pay? And
I would say it's great because when you're young, you probably, you can afford to work without having to earn anything.
Exactly.
If you're still living at home, you can work for a year without having any money coming in, versus if you're 35 and you've got 3 kids and you're having a wedding or whatever it is, it's like it's hard to leave that job because they need it to come in. But if you're young, you've got all this opportunity to kind of start doing that now.
Yep. Yeah, so that's a great point that you make, and so you can have more uncertainty when you're younger. So that is an advantage. But then once you okay, yep, I'm up for that. I'm happy to work for months or years before I going to start making great money. Then it's a case of going, before you look at a problem, like a problem is important as well for solving a problem, I think you should kind of find a market that you want to serve. And so a market you could want to serve is just, maybe it could be just, if you young and you haven't got a car, maybe it's just people that live within a kind of like a 1 kilometer radius of your home, so you can kind of like walk. So maybe your market is just like your geographical area,
your postcode
basically. Or maybe you're into surfing, so you're going to go, okay, I really love surfing, I love the people that sort of surf, and so that's kind of going to be my market. Or it might be I really love hanging out with dogs, for example. I love animals. And so then you go, okay, so now I've got a market, and like surfers, or I've got people in my area, or I might have people that love pets. And now I'm thinking, what problem do they have that I could solve?
Yes.
Because otherwise, if you think about any problem under the sun, it's just too big.
Yeah.
And so if you think about it as a market first, people in the local area, a lot of them are very busy. They don't have time to wash their car. That could be kind of a problem that they want solved, is they just want every Saturday I come around and wash their car. Or it could be like, doing their kind of like lawn, or picking up all of the kind of leaves that have fallen in winter or whatever. So that's an example. Maybe surfers, one of the things that they sort of like have is, oftentimes see them on a bike with a surfboard under their arm, and they're kind of all, but what about if you could kind of find and make like a stand that fits onto a bicycle or motorbike, that they could actually attach their board in a safe way, and so they don't have to hold on to their arm, for example. So you're finding a problem that they have, and you would find that by talking to them, and finding out what issues that they kind of like have. Or maybe it's kind of like, surfers, they wake up and they wonder what the surf's going to be like, and they would love an app that they could check the surf conditions or something like that. Or maybe, if you get up in the morning and you check the surf conditions at 6 o'clock, and you have people that'll pay you, $5, a week to then SMS them the surf conditions. I'm just making stuff up here, but it's just when you talk to the people, they'll start to give you kind of like ideas of what are the issues that you're facing around, your home, or what are the issues that you're facing around, your love of surfing. And then people will start to give you feedback. And then that's where you'll start to get some type of like an idea. And that it's not something that came from your head. It came from actually a market telling you that they've got a problem that they want solved, and you're going to be the solution to that problem. Because essentially that's what an entrepreneur is. An entrepreneur is a problem solver. We find problems in the marketplace with certain groups of people, and we're the solution to that particular problem. And then from there, what you want to do is you want to start getting a couple of customers, because you'll have a lot of people. If you go to people and say, "Hey, what do you think of this idea?" People will always go, "Wow, that's great! Fantastic!"
Yes. They want to support you.
They want to support you. They give you a pat on the back, or you feel good. But the real measure of whether an idea is a good idea, people are actually prepared to pull out their wallet and actually pay for something, even if it's at a 50% discount or something. But that's the true measure, when someone's prepared to pay for your service, real money, and transfer it now.
Probably not your family.
Yeah, not your family. Then okay, I've got something that the market wants. Because up until then, it's just like people, telling you, you're got a great idea.
And I was the same with the podcast. Like, when I launched my podcast, I got my family and everything to listen to it. And then when I actually launched it to my friends, everyone said it was really good. And then I wasn't satisfied until I actually had people I'd never heard of reach out to me and say, "Hey, this is really good." Or people I wasn't that close with actually messaged me like, "Hey, Byron, I wouldn't normally message you, but your podcast is amazing." And I'm just like, okay, now I'm confident that it's actually good.
Yeah.
Which is, because I think, it is, we want to be supportive, but we need to be realistic as well.
Exactly.
We need to see. And I think also, if you're trying to think of, most people will start a business if they're the surfer and it's their problem. Often I feel like it'll be like a surfer who wants to be a business owner, and they'll be like, "Well, I carry a surfboard under my arm. I'm going to try create this product." So I think if you could figure out something you're passionate about, in your, it could be something to do with video games, Dungeons and Dragons. I love that example, because it's such a, like, how can you make money in Dungeons and Dragons? These people have make millions through like rolling dice and like different minifigures and everything. Like, you can make money through so many different ways, just as long as you're passionate about it.
Yeah. And so sometimes it's actually people just like you. So your market, who's your market? Well, it's like anyone that's into what I'm into. And then you go, what problems do I have that I wish there was a solution to? And so there was nothing out there, so I'm going to kind of build it. So sometimes it can be you're solving your own, it's called scratching your own itch. Or other times it's you're finding a market, finding out what kind of like problems that they have and what they're prepared to pay money for, and then you're the solution. And then once you got your first kind of few customers on board, then it's always kind of like a balance between sort of like selling and marketing, getting customers, and then doing the work. So you get the work, do the work, get the work, do the work, and you got to kind of balance those.
You slowly
two.
Improve.
Yeah,
it's just climbing up.
That's right. There's two competing forces, because sometimes what happens is if you're very good at getting the work, then you're like really going to struggle to do the work because you've got too many customers and you haven't got enough capacity to deliver. And then other times you've got all this capacity, but you've got no customers. And so you got to kind of have a balance between the two. So getting customers is all about what's called marketing and sales. So words that everyone would have heard of before, but marketing is around generating awareness and interest in your product. And sales is then converting them into a sale, converting them into money in the bank, because you can create a lot of awareness and have heaps and heaps and heaps of followers, but then it becomes, how do I convert them into actual money? And so that's sales. So marketing and sales is all about, that's the kind of the money side of your business. But then you've got the delivery side of your business. And the delivery side is because when you sell something, you make a promise to say, I'm going to give you this in exchange for this money. And so you have to make sure you deliver.
Which is like Kickstarter.
Exactly.
Yeah. You say, you give us $50, we're going to promise you that in 6 months' time, we're going to give you this product.
That's right.
Simple as that.
And then you have to deliver, because the most valuable thing that you have in business is your reputation.
Yes.
And so you want to make sure that if you make a promise, you're known as the guy or girl that delivers on that promise. And then they're going to go, okay, I bought from you once and I'm going to buy from you again. And I'm going to tell all my friends because this person's amazing. So you've got to make sure that you kind of balance those two things and they grow kind of at the same rate. Because if one kind of grows faster than the other, then you got a problem.
And I talk about this a lot. Like in that example, let's say we've got someone who's really good at sales and marketing, but not so good at delivery. But then we might have someone who's really good at delivery, but not so good with sales and marketing. And that's where a great partnership could come in.
Sure, yeah.
And because so many times I've seen it, because I've seen a lot of small business owners, they'll be like a dentist and they'll be really good at doing dentistry, and they'll be like, I'll start a business around it. And they've got no idea how to do finance, how to manage a team, how to do any of that, but they're really good at being a dentist. Just like, what if you partnered up with someone who's just really good at running a business? And that way they don't have to worry about delivery. They can just focus on sales and marketing, and they can just focus on delivery. Like, do you think that's quite a popular thing or something people should be doing?
So I think partnerships can be something that's really good when you've got some strengths and someone else has got different strengths, and you kind of put your kind of like forces together. You just got to make sure that both of your values are aligned and your work ethic is kind of similar, because sometimes you can be in partnerships whereby someone kind of wants to work at nights on the weekends because they're really driven to kind of grow faster and build the business, and the other person like, oh, it's 5 o'clock now, time for me to go home. And on the weekends they're in the city and watching Seinfeld or something like that, and they just haven't got the same passion that the other person has. So it's really important to make sure that your values and your work ethic are aligned before you go into a partnership, because sometimes it can kind of like end in tears, and I've been on the receiving end of a few myself, and have had many kind of clients that have had partnerships that fall apart. So it's not quite as bad as like a marriage breakup, but it is very hurtful.
Of course, yeah.
And people take it personal, and also if there's money involved, who gets what, and it can get really messy. And so especially if it's like a friend, I'm not saying don't go into business with friends, because that can be awesome but just make sure that you're aligned in terms of your values and work ethic.
Work ethic, I think, is a big one.
Yeah.
Because that just I've seen it as well. It gets super messy when people are staying up and others aren't.
Yeah.
But we'll keep moving on. So we've got a product and a service, and we're slowly going up. What's the next step? Do we scale? Like, what's the next step? Yeah,
so once you then start, you're selling stuff and you're delivering, so you're kind of doing that, then there's going to be stuff that kind of happens along the way. Now you've got money and you've got bank accounts, and you've got to kind of have send people receipts, and you've got invoices and all of this stuff. So then you're going to have to start to learn about managing your money, so that's what we call finance. So at some point you'll definitely need a bank account to have this money, but you then will have to in Australia register for an ABN number and register for GST and all of these kind of things that you'll kind of learn as you go. Don't want to scare anyone or make it sound too difficult. It's not that hard, but then as you grow, there'll be things that you kind of need, and then you might have some type of small issue with a customer where they kind of go, I thought I was getting this, and you're like, no, actually, you this is how it works. And so you probably then need to have an agreement between you and them about, this is the time frame, this is the kind of cost, this is kind of if anything goes wrong, because what happens if, your shipment of products gets stuck, 14 days delay because of whatever drama that's outside of your control, and someone wants a refund, it can get messy. And so that's basically legal, so legal is basically going, okay, what are all the things that could go wrong? And how do we make sure they're in writing so that way we both agree to sort of say, I'm going to do the right thing by you, but you need to do the right thing by me. And these are the kind of rules of engagement. And so at some point as well, you just need a basic kind of like, if you're a service-based business, it would just be a basic kind of service agreement. And oftentimes you'd have like some type of application form. And then on the back will be like a service agreement. Or if it's done electronically, it's just like you can send someone a quote or an invoice, and here's the kind of like our service agreement that they read, and they tick a box that says I agree to these kind of terms. That's really important. Otherwise, you could have all everything you build kind of fall apart. So then you need some finance and you need legal, and then you're going to kind of get to a point whereby hopefully, if you're doing this well, you're going to start reaching capacity yourself.
In being able to deliver the work.
Yeah, be able to deliver the work, and then you or you might get busy delivering the work, and sales and marketing starts to suffer a little bit. And so then you're going to have to hire someone to help.
It's exciting.
Yeah. And so that's what we would call recruitment or management. When you kind of recruitment is obviously getting them on board, and then you're going to be managing someone else. Now, the great thing as well about with all the modern technology that we have, depending on the type of business, sometimes you have to physically employ someone that will be working in your space.
Like a cameraman or something.
Yeah, cameraman.
You can't do offshore.
Exactly. Or there are other things now, if you need someone to help you with other sort of things like social media posting or scheduling appointments, they can be actually remote. And if they can be remote, they could be anywhere in the world. And so that's where we look at something called outsourcing. So outsourcing is where basically we're finding other people to do sort of jobs for us.
This is where you're really becoming an entrepreneur, when you're starting to outsource. Because right now you're just kind of like an employee for your company almost, where you're just delivering and doing the sales and marketing.
Yeah.
But this is where you're actually starting to become an entrepreneur, when you're outsourcing and you're employing people, and then when you can employ management is actually what you mentioned earlier on, and they're managing the team. Now you're the entrepreneur.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And so then you start to sort of like learn some new skills. And at every point in time, like you're always going to like know nothing, and then you're going to kind of learn a bit, be okay, and then eventually get better and then get great. So you're kind of always going to have to go through that journey. But basically, you're going to suck at everything before you become good at it.
Yeah.
So that's just going to be, you're going to suck at finance until you get good at it. Same with legal, same with recruitment, same with everything. But you're just going to have to do it. It's like, going through and getting your belts. If you're in martial arts, you got your white belt, and then you've got your whatever yellow belt.
Yeah.
Your blue belt or green belt, brown belt, black belt. So they just consider them kind of like levels that you're going to have to learn and kind of master over time. And sometimes it would take you years to kind of like master some of these levels, but that's all part of the journey. And the good thing is, once you know how to do it once, you can then do it again and again and again. And so you start managing people, and then once you're hiring people, you're going to have to start building systems, because these guys or girls you hire are going to need to know, well, what do I do? So you might say, okay, I'm now going to give you the job of doing stock take. I'm now going to give you the job of doing our end of day reconciliations or whatever it is. But they're going to go, how do I do that? And it's like your job to write a system, which is kind of like a recipe.
Yeah.
It's
a good way of saying it.
Yeah. For like this step 1, do this, step 2, do this, step 3, do this. And now what you can do as well, rather than just writing it out, sometimes if it's something that's physical, you might do a video that you're going to record teaching them what to do. And then you could store that sort of on basically somewhere like Google Drive, or maybe something called Google Sites, which is a place where you can store all of your systems. And then you're going to employ someone and say, okay, your job is now to look after this area of the business, and you're now responsible for these 5 things, and here's how to do them. And then over time, you're going to give them more and more things, and eventually they might end up with 10 or 15 or 20 jobs that they're going to be doing for you in your business. And then you'll kind of like maybe start with someone part-time, and they'll go full-time, and then you'll go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 10, and you'll just kind of end up growing your team. And then there's so many different ways you can go after that. If you want to expand into other locations, or you want to expand into other states or into other countries, you want to go online, there's just heaps of different things that you can do depending on the type of business you have.
But that's the fundamentals.
Yeah.
And I think what's cool is, because once again, going back to, I guess, as someone who is young in Generation Z and millennial, kind of both, for us, all we see on social media is the successful people who made it, that 5%, and we don't see how much work actually goes into making a business. Like, there's so many different steps, and like, how long does that normally take? At least a year, 2-3 years before you're kind of employing lots and lots of people.
Yeah.
At least from what I've seen.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important that people go in knowing you're not going to earn any money. You're not going to know anything, and you're going to have to learn as you go and do everything we've just kind of said. Because from the outside, it looks like, oh, you just start a social media account and start doing some marketing, and boom, you're making money online or whatever it is. So I think it's super important that we understand there are so many different steps in starting a business, and how to start a business. And I think we probably both agree that school doesn't really cover that at all.
That's right.
I guess I'd love to know, what do you think school should be covering when it comes to entrepreneurship or business, or do you think it's fine and we should worry about it afterwards?
No, I definitely think that the education system needs to be teaching more practical life skills. We spend so much time on subjects like maths and English, and they're obviously important to have a kind of a good base and science and history and whatever. However, a lot of like maths, I've probably forgotten 90% of what I've kind
so
of.
So
like,
I graduated,
yeah.
3-4 years ago,
and I still use basic the basics like adding and minusing and percentages and stuff like that. But otherwise, there's software that pretty much does everything now.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of information that I really need to retain. And even when I forget stuff, I just go type in percentage ratio calculator into Google, and I plug in 2 numbers and it gives me the percentage. Like, it's almost faster to do it like that than it is to kind of like work it out in your head or even write it down. And so what should we be teaching? More practical life skills, things like goal setting, leadership, communication skills, money skills, how to manage your like emotional intelligence, how to communicate better, public speaking skills.
I think storytelling is a good one as well.
Storytelling, yeah, absolutely. So there's so many like amazing skills. Even things like building, understanding how money works, and understanding about like loans and debt and saving and property and shares and all of these other things, which are really important, because when you do get your money sorted, it's just this huge kind of like, so much of people's mental energy in life is about is just thinking about money. Will I have enough money? And going at a restaurant and looking at the price of everything and choosing what they want to eat based on the price. It wouldn't be cool if you could just go, I don't even have to look at the price. I can just get whatever I feel like eating today. That's just a wonderful kind of place to be in. It's not about being rich, like having all this money and all this bling and stuff like that. Like, most of that stuff is bullshit. It's really just about you being in a position whereby money does not have to control your life, and so
financial stress is horrible.
Yeah,
I've been there,
horrible.
and it's like so stressful. Like, I really feel for people who are in that financial stress.
Yeah.
But like, you just got to get it sorted.
Yeah,
it's so important, and it's every day. You're going to be using money every single day for the rest of your life. It's going to determine so many things. It's like we need to be learning the fundamentals.
Totally. And I know you've put out some amazing content in that area and got awesome people around you, and I encourage everyone to kind of go back through the back catalog of all the interviews that you have done to learn more about this stuff. So that should be, in our education system. I started my first company was called Tomorrow's Youth, that was started in, like I said, 2001. And the whole idea was kind of realizing the fact that, we're not going to change the education system in a hurry. So we set up a program to kind of like help other young people to learn a lot of these practical life skills. And now with what you're doing, it's just making it so much more accessible that people can access it on their phone in these bite-sized chunks as well. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, no, yeah. I think it's super exciting for young people in terms of business opportunities. And as you mentioned, like, I started listening to podcasts when I was in high school, and it like changed my life and just that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But we're running out of time here. And just before we wrap up, I like to ask all of my guests this one question.
Yep.
And it can be completely unrelated to what we've spoken about.
Sure.
Basically, what would be your number one piece of advice for the younger generation? So HSC, kind of coming out of high school, entering the workforce in uni, like, what would be your number one piece of advice for them?
Yeah, there's so many things that I could say to that, but I think overall it's really about like I think the most valuable asset that you have is your character, and part of what you need to always be is to be a be a kind person, be a good person, because your reputation is kind of like everything. And if you're always good to people and people always remember you as someone that was kind, honest, hardworking, genuine, then you'll naturally attract lots of opportunities to you. But if you're unreliable and you are rude and you
late all the time,
or talk down to people, or you just act like a spoiled brat, then don't expect anyone to open doors or to create opportunities or to want to go out of their way to help you. So stay humble, work hard, be a good person, be kind to everyone that you meet, and that will help you to really go places in life.
Yeah, it's linking back to what you said about the number one thing in business you have is your reputation. So it's just making sure that, because you can start building your reputation from a young age.
Yeah.
And that's the best time to start building it from a young age, when you don't really have a reputation yet. You can build it from scratch almost.
Yeah.
So yeah. Dale, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
For anyone listening, if they want to find out more about you or follow you online, where's the best place to go?
Yeah, go to my website, dalebeaumont.com is my website. If you search for my name as well, you'll find me on Instagram or on Facebook as well. But my website's probably got links to everything else.
And that'll all be in the comments below. So
great.
Dale, thanks so much for coming on
Thank
the
you.
show. That's it for this episode of the Driven Young podcast. Thank you so much for listening to the entire episode. That means the world to me. And if you got some value out of it, please shoot me a message on Instagram or reach out to me. Or I would love for you to leave a rating or review on this podcast. So make sure you are subscribed, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.